What is going on, Optimistic Fan Club? We are back for our weekly episode here on YouTube. We've been churning them out. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Even if you're not a Browns fan, we're trying to grow our reach here. So a little housekeeping quick before we jump into it. If you want to listen to the audio versions, I put the link below. Check that out. Listen on the commute, on the way to work, whatever. Cut it up. If you don't want to have to listen to the ad inserts, and not the ads that I run because I don't run ads. I'm talking about YouTube stuff. So go check that out on there. It is all ad-free. It is ready to listen to. But with that being said, let's get right into things. Big week that has just transpired. Rookie minicamp is over. We touched a little bit on that on Patreon. And, I've been thinking through the Patreon just as a side thing here. Might be breaking that down and building our own platform. So stay tuned for that if you're a Patreon subscriber. It's not going to change anything for you, though. So don't worry about that. But all that to say, rookie minicamp was a buzz. We said it on our first live in our draft recap that the Browns are going to be the center of the football world up until September. It's the most interesting story. They're probably going to push to try and get them to take on Hard Knocks, Shedeur Sanders, Dillon Gabriel, and the whole lot there. But it primarily revolves around Shedeur Sanders. And it's not his fault. It's just the way the media works. He's a great story. He's very charismatic. All this, all that. But from what it seems, and I'm not an insider, I would never label myself as that. I'm not at the practice facility, but it seems like from the people who were there and who were around that both Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders were really effective in how they operated the offense, that they both made some really fantastic throws, that there were times that they did look like rookies. I believe that's what Nathan Zagura said. But they did a solid job, and a lot of people weren't used to having accurate quarterbacks, especially young accurate quarterbacks, around throwing the ball. So that is all really, really great news. However, there are still people trying to find issues within a good story and a good competitive environment that is being brought up. We're not going to spend a ton of time addressing those people because there's bigger things to cover today, like the schedule release. That is going to be a big portion of what we talk about today, what I think the Browns record will ultimately be, when I think Shedeur Sanders is going to make his first start. Also touching on the Jaguars and their schedule, because obviously that impacts the Browns, and this is primarily Browns biased, as you can tell. But we're also going to touch on, some of the head coaches who I think have a huge amount of pressure on them going into this year, and why I don't think Kevin Stefanski is one of those guys. And then we're going to cap off with all the Mason Graham stuff. You saw certain people coming out saying like, oh, this isn't a 5th overall pick. He looks like a fat kid. All this stuff going on that is so not rooted in film analysis or educated takes whatsoever. It's primarily this guy, John Frashella, who's been wrong in the past before. We're going to go deep on that. But with all that being said, let's jump into the Browns schedule release. So comes out, Cleveland. Yeah, who would have guessed it? They are once again in the top 5 for hardest strengths of schedule. Last year, they were, I believe, number 1 or 2. It was them and Baltimore had the toughest strength of schedule. Now Cleveland once again has a top 3 difficulty in terms of strength of schedule. And the first 5-6 weeks are an absolute barrage. So you got Cincinnati week 1, which, Cincinnati week 1 historically, in terms of the Kevin Stefanski era, they've been able to hold their own, especially at home against those teams. But Joe Burrow is extremely talented. I wouldn't count on him as being a guy who just can't win in Cleveland. However, Tom Brady had a very difficult time winning in Miami. That's a little different because there's the weather aspect of it. It's much longer travel, different climates. That's a different scenario. But maybe the Browns just got their number. Maybe Jim Schwartz just has Joe Burrow's number. So I think that opening week is a very, very winnable game. But then from there on, you got week 2 against the Ravens. Then you got week 3 against the Packers. Then you got the Lions. And then you go to London to play the Vikings. And then week 6 away at the Steelers. Bringing back Joe Flacco was primarily for this reason right here. What was the beginning of your schedule going to look like? Because Cleveland has to evaluate the quarterbacks on this roster. If Joe Flacco comes out and it really would be a miracle. If he leaves that opening slog at 500, you keep rolling with Joe Flacco until the wheels start to come off. And it's kind of, the writing's on the wall that you can't make a playoff push. He's going to have that opportunity. But I really do believe people like Colin Cowherd are making it seem more nefarious than it really is, being like, they want Shedeur because they want the headlines, and that's the way Jimmy Haslam has always been, and yada, 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 and they're going to look for a reason to pull Joe Flacco. This team wants to win. They made their promises to Myles Garrett. Joel Bitonio came back. Like, the coaches want to serve the players in terms of getting wins, and the coaches want to win so they don't get fired. So it's not that nefarious where it's like he's the sacrificial lamb and they're going to move on. I just think, honestly, the truth within that theory is that I think that's just the way it's going to play out. And I think that's the way that most people believe that it's going to play out. And if this was 2023, I think Joe Flacco could pull off and rattle off a lot of those wins in those opening games. But this roster has seen a decent amount of turnover. And the biggest issue is the degradation of the offensive line. Not that they don't have replacements, not that they don't have talent there still, but it's still unproven. Like we've talked about, DeJuan Jones coming off back-to-back season-ending injuries. He looks like he could be pretty solid as a full-year starter, but he has to stay healthy for a full year. Wyatt Teller, I think, is the best piece on this offensive line. Jack Conklin had a really good year last year. He's got to stay healthy. Posich, probably going to be gone after this year. And then Bitonio is like a Hall of Famer, but he's getting older and getting injured a little bit more often. So that really leaves like Javian Cohen, the guy who they brought in from the Bears, Zach Zinter, Luke Weipler. Those guys are the ones who have to step in and really rise up to the occasion if the Browns don't want to have to burn all of their draft picks next year on offensive linemen. And that's really going to determine the level to which they're successful early on. Because if they can run the ball against the Ravens, if they can run the ball against the Packers and the Lions, like, they're going to be close enough games where you're staying competitive. Even if you don't win, they're probably going to be, in terms of Kevin Stefanski, probably going to look at it and be like, okay, like, I like Flacco to continue coming out and play well beyond week 6. And that is all exciting to think about in terms of having another Cinderella run with Joe Flacco. But I just, again, don't believe that it's going to turn out that way, particularly because this opening portion of the schedule is going to be so difficult. And you have a lot of young guys coming out playing their first live snaps against some of the best defenses and best teams in the NFL. That's a really tall order, and I think that that's a lot for a guy like Joe Flacco to come out and try and get everyone else to rise up to that occasion. And the fact of the matter is that Joe Flacco turns the ball over a lot. It's his ultimate downfall. Even when he was in Cleveland, people loved to romanticize 13 touchdowns. Like, he also had 6 or 7 interceptions. He was throwing 1 to 2 picks per game, and we all know how the playoffs turned out. So he's not the long-term answer. They need him to be that steady hand early on and to protect these rookie quarterbacks from getting in too early and getting hurt, getting shell-shocked, and never really being able to develop. Like, I couldn't imagine Dylan Gabriel going out and playing the Ravens in week 3 or 2. So I think, honestly, the Browns will be 1-6 in that stretch, or 1-5 in that stretch. If they're 3-3, Flacco keeps getting the start. If they're 1-5, Colin Cowherd came out. He said he thinks that Shedeur Sanders is going to get his first start week 6 away at the Steelers. That makes zero sense to me. Why would you start a rookie quarterback on the road against one of the teams with the most home field advantage in a place where you haven't beat them? The Browns haven't beat Pittsburgh since the early 2000s in Pittsburgh. Why throw a rookie quarterback out into that mess? It's just not a good plan. So what I've been saying since the schedule release is that week 7 against the Dolphins is when Shedeur Sanders will get his first start for the Browns. You're playing Miami. You're playing at home. It's mid-October, probably, hopefully, solid enough weather. These running backs will have acclimated a little bit. they will have some experience under their belts to be able to be consistent in that run game to help out their rookie quarterback. And I think that that's the perfect place where you can insert him, give him a solid week to prepare for that, and go out and probably perform pretty decently. Miami's defense is not what Pittsburgh's is. It's not what the Ravens is, not what Detroit's is, or even the Packers. So that's, to me, where I would see him. And the reason why I'm saying Shedeur Sanders and not Dillon Gabriel, because a lot of people are like, we need to put some respect on Dillon Gabriel. He was the 3rd round pick. He was taken before Shedeur. He's the guy who's going to get the opportunity. Or like, why are we treating him as this afterthought? I'm speaking about this from the lens of my opinion and my pre-draft analysis. Like, Shedeur Sanders was my number 2 quarterback here. So that's why I have him there. Like, I wanted the Browns to take Shedeur Sanders. I made tons of videos on it. I went at length as to why, but I just think he is the guy. So that's why I'm saying Shedeur Sanders is going to get the start week 7, not Dillon Gabriel. But regardless, I think if any rookie quarterback is going to play, or any quarterback other than Joe Flacco, it will be that week 7 against Miami, because it just makes the most sense. So then if Shedeur takes over in week 7, what do I think can happen from there? So in this hypothetical scenario, the Browns are 1-5 at this point. It looks like the season's kind of written on the wall. I think he could absolutely beat the Dolphins at home. I think he could beat the Jets. I think they could beat the Ravens later on in the season, the 49ers, the Titans, and then the Steelers at home later on in the season. And then they lose to the Patriots, the Raiders, the Bears, the Bills, the Bengals late in the season. So this has my Browns record prediction based on the schedule release, the way it was rolled out, at 8-9. And I think that that is an extremely successful season considering where things are going. And there's a lot baked into that reason why, and like why I think Shedeur Sanders could absolutely step in here and be an extremely effective quarterback. Like I said, go on Patreon, watch the film analysis. Maybe I'll wind up releasing that on YouTube, so there's a point of reference in terms of my opinion on him. But I think the biggest piece is the confidence. The ability to have a team, an offense, believe in their leader. That's something that's so infectious. It pulls people up to another level. It's what Joe Flacco did when he stepped in. He pulled this team up to another level once Deshaun Watson was injured, and once DTR showed that he could not be that guy. When guys believe in you, they play at a different level. Amari Cooper played at a different level. David Njoku played at a different level. Even this year, Jameis Winston steps in. He didn't have the wins to go with everything because, again, he threw a lot of interceptions like Joe Flacco did, but his were even more backbreaking. Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman take these huge steps forward. And I think that Shedeur Sanders is that kind of guy. Not just from an execution side of things, like not just from his accuracy, but again, because of the leadership, because of his voice, and because of his ability to get on guys and make them rise to the occasion. I think that that is such an undervalued thing. And those are the portions that people point to and they go, oh man, this guy's got heart. He has leadership skills. He has this, he has that. That is a crucial thing that it's like, I value that more than arm strength. I value that more than completion percentage, than touchdown to interception ratio. At the end of the day, it's like, can you bring a team down the field late in the game and pull out a win? That takes belief. That takes a clutch gene. And I think that he has those things going for him. So again, that is why I'm talking about Shedeur Sanders in this instant. And I think that he could win a bunch of games this year for the Browns. And in my ideal scenario, like, people are already talking about Lenore Sellers, Arch Manning, Drew Aller, and I've been vocal about Drew Aller. I think he's a great player. If he had been available in this draft, that's who I would have wanted the Browns to take. But now you have Shedeur Sanders. You have the ability to like have your franchise guy right here and right now. And you can use all of those picks next year for more weapons, for offensive line help. You could trade back and get a king's ransom for all of these high draft picks that you're probably going to wind up having, or at least one really high draft pick, because I think, again, the Browns will be outside of the top 10, not in the 20s like a playoff team, but like they'll be in the 10s, like the early teen area. I think that that's where they're going to be picking. And I think their Jags pick is going to be top 7. We're going to get to that in a second. But, you know, it's a better scenario to try and win now and determine if you have the guy in the building already, because then you're not burning any draft picks next year. And you can't get into a position if he does do well, if he does get you to that 8 and 9 spot, or even if he just shows that he has the ability to be a franchise quarterback in this league. You don't go and make the same mistake that you did with Baker Mayfield, where you go, hey, the grass is greener, Deshaun Watson. You don't make this move for like a non-guaranteed thing. 1 in the hand is worth more than 2 in the bush. It's like something my coach always used to say to me, like, take what they're giving you now. Take that guy now who's showing that he can be effective. And this is all contingent. It all relies on him actually producing. But I really do believe that he can. And this is, you know, now I kind of want to shift to like this media narrative. Everyone's been talking, why wasn't Shedeur picked? Was it performance? Was it an off-field thing? Was it something that we just still don't know about? I really don't know. It boggles my mind. I think that there's a lot of things that you could point to. I think the pre-draft interview with the Giants, that was probably something right there. Maybe the Dion influence. There's a bunch of ways. But to me, again, you look at it, he's a very talented quarterback. He's the second best quarterback in this draft. Cam Ward was my number 1, without a doubt. Shedeur is extremely talented. And people say, you know, maybe he wasn't taken later on because they didn't believe that he would be willing to be a backup, that he'd be willing to be silent, because having a very popular backup quarterback, similar to a Tim Tebow, a Colin Kaepernick, any other number of guys, that creates a distraction. It creates issues in the locker room, in the media, because everyone's always asking. The fans start to erupt. They want the new guy. They want the new shiny thing. That should not affect the way a coach coaches. Just because you have a player with a big personality behind you, and I'm saying like media perception, not anything that they're doing, not like political divisiveness, not things where they're trying to promote themselves beyond the team and the mission of winning football games, which needs to be the primary focus. I'm not talking about that. I'm like, Shedeur Sanders has not shown anything off field that would indicate he is going to be a distraction outside of football. Maybe you could argue, oh yeah, his music video, whatever. He's stated he's not about being a rapper or anything. He just wants to play ball. He has said that himself. So going back to like the reason as to why he wasn't taken and why he fell to the 5th round, people are just out here being like, he needed to be willing to be a backup. He needed to be, seen but not heard. He needed to essentially be invisible in the quarterback room and just support his backup. Well, this is where it's interesting for the Browns. I could get that. If you were Shedeur Sanders and you're getting drafted to Baltimore and you're going to be a really high-end backup for Lamar Jackson or Buffalo, or maybe even with the Raiders, because they have Geno Smith now and they've committed to him for a couple of years. The Browns aren't in that position. Joe Flacco is a 1-year rental. And the Browns have to figure out whether or not him or Dillon Gabriel are the guys going forward because of what we just mentioned. 2 first-round picks next year. Tons of equity to get a more blue-chip level quarterback. So this whole thing of like he needs to be a quiet and willing backup and this and that, I agree. You don't want to be a distraction, not a negative influence, but he's not that guy. So that isn't going to happen. But the Browns need a bold leader. They need someone to be a disruptor, to step in, galvanize the locker room, win the belief of the teammates, and step forward and be that guy. They don't need a passive person who's going to stand back, go, hey, I'm just going to patiently wait for my turn. Yes, you can be patient in terms of the public things you say, the way you handle yourself in press conferences. But in the building, you're studying, you're spending more time on the field. You are doing everything, spending more time in the coach's office to signify that you are ready to be handed that starting spot. So this whole concept of he needs to be a passive player, he needs to be a supportive backup. Yes, you can be supportive, but you could also be a deadly competitor. And that is what he is, and that's what he's going to do. And ultimately, it's the coach's decision. Hopefully this year, hopefully ownership and Paul DePodesta, all these guys don't get involved. But it's going to be the coach's decision. And after that first stretch of games, if they feel like this is the dude who's put in the most work, who has the belief of his teammates, this is who we're going to roll with, like, I think that it could be very good. So we do not need a passive player. We need a bold takeover with leadership that shows a positive trajectory heading into 2026, or else the Browns are going to have to take another quarterback. And I don't think that that is the best case scenario for this team. I think it's honestly a really bad case scenario. So that was just something that, you know, this whole concept of being a good soldier, it's like, no, you need a revolutionary. You need someone who is going to change the culture. What Shedeur Sanders said, he's like, don't take me if you're not trying to change your culture. The Browns quarterback culture has been nothing but bad. You need a new speed there. You need a new voice. And I think that Shedeur Sanders is the strongest personality type multiplied by the ultimate skill set to go with that. Again, his intermediate throws, his ice in his veins in big moments in tight games down the line. Like, it's just so obvious to me, and equally as flabbergasting that he fell the way that he did. So that was all I had to say about that. We need a quarterback to emerge, and if it's not Shedeur or Gabriel and it isn't clear and obvious, they will do something in 2026. However, if you hit the jackpot. So now really quick, let's shift to the Jaguars 2025 schedule, because I looked at this and it's like, obviously a big portion of the Browns' future is hinging on how they perform. It's their first round draft pick. Like, they got it in that Travis Hunter trade, moving from number 2 to number 5. So if the Jags play bad, it is all benefit to Cleveland. The Jaguars have to win now. They made a very bold trade. Their new young GM to step in and make a move like that. Like, guys like John Middlecoff, they've been very vocal. It's like, you don't even know your team yet you're making a move like that. That's sacrificing year 2 of your rebuild, essentially. And additionally, too, like, Trevor Lawrence is coming back from a shoulder surgery, non-throwing, but still an AC joint sprain that has kind of been lingering. He also had a concussion last year. You have a ton of questions. You don't have an insane amount of talent. Like, Evan Ingram is a good piece. Brian Thomas Jr., really solid, really like ascending player. He's going to have a great year too, I'm sure. And then Travis Hunter, who I think is going to be a fantastic football player. If he's going to be a fantastic receiver, that's something that we will find out. But all that to say, there's a ton of uncertainty around the Jags, and they made this move like they're ready to win now. So if they're not, that is totally Cleveland's gain in all of this, as we all know. So the Browns have a top 5 hardest schedule. The Jags have a top 5 easiest schedule in terms of strength of schedule. However, like, I still think there's a world where they only have 4 to 5 wins. I think Carolina is going to be vastly better than they were. I think Bryce Young, the way that people were like, Bryce Young's a bust, he sucks. He was in such a dysfunctional situation. Frank Reich, that whole project that went on, David Tepper, it's a mess in Carolina. But the way he fought back, the way he sat behind Andy Dalton, he was calm, he was composed, he waited for his moment, and then he came out and really started to have some great games down the stretch. That's a ton to build on. And I'm sure his confidence is working way back up. They still have Adam Thielen. They got Ted McMillan, and then they have Xavier Leggett from the year before. So there's talent on that team. I think Dave Canales is a good coach. I think he's better than Liam Cohn is. I think he was more responsible for turning around Baker than what Cohn did with Baker Mayfield this past season. Like, I think that was a lot more Dave Canales. So I like them a lot. Houston is the king of the AFC South now. I don't think will be dethroned. I think they're going to win. And like the Colts, like, I trust Shane Steichen more than Liam Cohn. I trust a lot of their pieces outside of quarterback more than I trust the roster of the Jaguars. So with that being said, like, I think at their ceiling, they're a 7-win team. Some people have them winning 9 games, finishing second in that division. Not me. I think they are a 4 to 7-win team. I'd put it at 5 wins. So I think that puts Cleveland with a top 7 pick no matter what next year, regardless of what they do with their own record and how that affects their pick. So that's big. And again, with Trevor Lawrence here, Trevor Lawrence is coming off of a surgery. He had a concussion last year, but he's also on his 4th head coach. 4th head coach since he came to the league as the number 1 overall pick with Urban Meyer. Then they fire him. I forget who the interim was when Urban got fired in week 10. But then they go to Doug Peterson, and now they've got Cohn. So that is a lot for a player to overcome. And with a rookie GM, rookie head coach, quarterback on his 4th playbook and 4th head coach, I got him at about 5 wins. I got the Browns with a top 7 pick going into 2026. But we will see how that goes. Just thought that would be an important thing to touch on now that the schedule is released. But now I want to switch to something else. Who are the coaches with the most pressure on them going into 2025? Like, who has the most to prove or has the shortest leash? Because, we're talking about new head coaches, talking about Kevin Stefanski, the Browns, like trying to rebound after their most disappointing yet under his regime in Cleveland. But when you look around the league, there's a lot of guys who, like, you might not expect to have some pressure on them, but you see, year 6, year 7 with their quarterbacks, year 5, year 6 in their tenure on a new team. Like, what is going on there? Are you able to get over the hill, or do they need to start fresh? And I think the first person that comes to mind is John Harbaugh in Baltimore. And yes, if you're a Baltimore fan watching this, yes, I am a Cleveland fan speaking to you. This isn't salt. This is nothing like that. I've fully acknowledged, like, the Ravens are a fantastic team. Lamar Jackson is an outstanding player. He's a perennial MVP candidate year in and year out. But that's the issue. The fact that the Ravens haven't made a Super Bowl appearance yet, and the fact that they backslid last year, even though you could make an argument that their roster was better than it was the year when they went to the AFC Championship. I think on the defensive side of the ball, it was better in that 2024 playoff run. The 2025 playoff run from last year was a little different on the offensive side because, Zay Flowers comes out. He's improved more. Isaiah Likely, took a big step early in the year. Didn't really carry that forward all the way. But then, Rashad Bateman had a solid season. The big piece was Derrick Henry, though. You have Derrick Henry still producing at an extremely, extremely high level. And just what the Ravens are. They're bruisers. They're tough. So much of that is just ingrained in the organization itself. It's like that existed long before John Harbaugh. That was there when Ray Lewis was drafted, when Ed Reed was doing his thing, with Terrell Suggs. They've had that edge to them their entire existence as a franchise. So to put so much of that on John Harbaugh and be like, it's because of him and we're going to lose that if he's gone, I don't think that that's a thing. I think with the Ravens, if they can't at least have a convincing performance in the AFC Championship, if they lose in another divisional, I could 1000% see them promoting John Harbaugh to a position within the front office and then bringing in a new voice, because sometimes that's all you need, a fresh voice to push a team over the hill, to actually spark something within the quarterback, within the offense, within the defense, to make a change and get over that sticking point that for some reason you can't get behind. And sure, John Harbaugh didn't drop the ball that Mark Andrews did last season. However, the year before in the AFC Championship, your head coach should have some sort of input when it comes to your offensive game plan. When you come out passing over and over and over against the Chiefs, when you're the best running team with the best running quarterback of all time. How do you let that happen as a head coach? I think that's a huge thing that people are talking about. They were talking about it at the end of last year. Then this past season, like to lose to the Bills, and the Bills were great. Josh Allen was the MVP. Very well could have been Lamar Jackson, though. And I think that the Ravens had a better overall roster in terms of like foundational playoff football recipe for success. So to lose that one, it's like, that's really difficult there. I think John Harbaugh is a great coach. He's one of the best in the league, but like similar to Mike Tomlin, what have you done for me lately? It's been 12 years since he won the Super Bowl, like going on 13. There's a time to make a change, and I think that they need to make that change. If it doesn't happen now, while Lamar Jackson is still in his prime, if not, it could just be more of the same the whole way, all the way through. So that's the first name. The next, Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll went 9-7 in his first year. They go to the playoffs. Daniel Jones had a good enough year that they gave him that huge contract, even though it was really Saquon Barkley who sparked that playoff surge and that great season. So they go 9-7. Then the next year they go 6-11. Then they go 3-14 last year. You can't keep getting worse. Like with Kevin Stefanski, it's a different situation where he wins 11 games and then 8 games. And then he wins 11 games and then he wins 3 games. It's like there's a difference in the higher and lower performances that are going on. And it's kind of cyclical. There's also 2 Coach of the Year awards within that cycle, right? So it's different with Brian Daboll. It's like you start off hot, you get worse, and then you get even worse than the second season. Brian Daboll is absolutely on the hot seat going into this year. And it's really interesting because I was going back and watching all the behind the scenes of Joe Schoen drafting Jackson Dart and kind of like the process that went into it when they traded back into the first round. And he's sitting there kind of talking. He's like, you know, like, hey, are people even going to remember a 3rd round pick if this hits? And then he's talking to Brian Daboll being like, you know, you guys feel confident, right? Like, we went through this whole process. We feel confident with where we're at, right? And he's kind of making this seem like it's a shared decision with Brian Daboll, even though we know that Joe Schoen was the main factor in Saquon Barkley signing with a division rival. And not just that, it's like you make that bet, allow him to sign with a division rival, and then he has one of the great running back seasons of all time, and is one of the primary catalysts of that team winning the Super Bowl the year you let him go. So Joe Schoen's like kind of talking like, we've all done our research, right? Like, Brian Daboll, you feel pretty good about this, right? And he's speaking in a way where it's like, I know I'm the one that has to make the decision, but I'm trying to get this on camera that like you're up for this too, right? So it seems like a little weird. And in the video too, like Daboll's kind of like looking at him, then looking down. He's not making consistent eye contact and being committed, being like, yes, we got to do this. We got to do this. So that was really interesting. That's a lot of reading in between the lines, but that's what we do here. So, you know, I see that and I'm just like, there's just a weird vibe to it. It ultimately all boils down to, do they have a good season with Jackson Dart? Because Jackson Dart is their main savior here. They got Russell Wilson. They got Jameis. Those guys will get you enough positive momentum to keep you alive until you make the switch to Jackson Dart. And then once Jackson Dart gets a start, it's like you're going to have to be pretty convincing from that point going forward that you're going to be able to continue developing this guy and that the team is moving in a positive trajectory. Because if not, like if it's not absolutely convincing to their ownership, like to the Mara family, if they don't go out and I think win 6-7 games, like I think they have to win 7 or 8 realistically. Like it has to be extremely convincing that they're moving in the right direction and that Jackson Dart is a real franchise quarterback. I think Daboll's going to be out. Shane's going to be out. So I think Brian Daboll, a massive amount of weight on his shoulders going into this year. And so much of it will be riding on a rookie quarterback because he showed like he could kind of fix Daniel Jones, but after that, he showed his displeasure multiple times over on the sidelines, like chewing him out, being like, what are you doing? So he can't have any of that going forward because this is their guy. And Joe Schoen is really making it seem like this is a collective decision that we all agree on. So they have to get this right. And now finally, Mike McDaniel. I think this is like the most clear and obvious of coaches who have so much pressure going into this season. And I've talked at length about Mike McDaniel. I did a whole portion of last episode. I forget if it was on Patreon or on the main YouTube page. But I just talked about like the whole concept of like bullshit coaches. And I don't mean bullshit in the sense that he doesn't know what he's doing. He's clearly a very brilliant football mind. He's really intelligent. But football coaching is so much more than X's and O's. It's why Dan Campbell has turned the Lions around. And it's why there's no guarantee that Ben Johnson is going to be successful in Chicago. It's not just about X's and O's. It's like you got to piss some vinegar. You have to win the belief of your team over. You have to have a heart. You have to have a real connection. You have to show that you're committed and that like this isn't a game. And guys like Mike McDaniel, they get a ton of spotlight because it's like, oh my God, didn't they have such a quirky, fun interview and the way he interacted with the press conference? Okay. What about when it's freezing cold and you can't run the ball against Kansas City in the playoffs? What about when your players consistently have off-field issues that become distractions? It's like, do your players respect you? Do your players fear you even? I don't think there's any of that with Mike McDaniel. Like Christian Wilkins, before he left for the Raiders, it's like, I don't think Mike McDaniel could stand in front of that guy and tell him what to do, and Christian Wilkins respect him. Maybe he did just because he's a respectful person. But you don't deal with those kind of characters on a team all the time. And I think that that's where they've like run into issues with Tyreek Hill constantly. Like that is why I think Kansas City was fine to let him go. You know, ultimately it was Tyreek Hill's decision, but still it's like Miami has consistently been a landing spot for not like problematic people, but just guys who it seems that football isn't number one. And I think that the way Mike McDaniel carries himself with like the quirky interviews, just kind of the vibe that he gives off, that it's like, you know, all the memes of like, he's like the coach's son who got the keys and his dad's on vacation. It's like, that isn't long-term culture setting aura. And a lot of this is about aura. It's like, literally, it's like, you know why Mike Vrabel didn't get a job in his first cycle after the Titans fired him and the Browns picked him up as an assistant? It's because he had an imposing presence and front offices and GMs and owners didn't feel like they were going to be able to direct that guy in the way that he wanted him to go. They felt that he was going to be a renegade and he was going to stick to his process and run his program. It's like, newsflash, the best NFL teams in history have been run like dictatorships, not democracies. Belichick, Bill Walsh. Like, people look at Bill Walsh historically and they're like, he seems like a nice old guy. It's like, the guy was ruthless. Like, the guy traded Joe Montana. This is the reality. Like, people like Bill Walsh, like Bill Belichick, they might have different exteriors and like a different process of doing things, but they are cutthroat and they are tough and they command people's respect and they draw a hard line in the sand. Andy Reid, another guy. Oh, he's the big jolly fat guy. That dude is tough. He runs tough training camps. He demands the best out of his players. The best coaches are tough at their core. They're not like these friendly guys who have funny interviews. Like, maybe they have moments, but that's not what the basis of their popularity is built on. It's built around respect and consistent performance. And I think that Miami is just so much flash and not enough fundamental. It's all about motion and movement and disguising certain things and like catching people off guard rather than what, again, I talk about this all the time. It's like, if you're in a situation where you need 1 yard, who is the team that is going to prevent you from getting 1 yard? Who is the team that is going to impose your will and get the yard that you need? And if you look at the people who win Super Bowls consistently, it's the guys who can do that in those situations. It's like, look at the Eagles, look at the Chiefs. They both had instances over their playoff runs where it was like literally about getting 1 yard. The Eagles with the tush push, constantly scoring, doing their thing. With Kansas City against Buffalo, Buffalo needs to get 1 yard. Chris Jones, their defense, Steve Spagnuolo, they get that stop. And ultimately that's what wins them that game. And that is not about disguise or motions or flash or trickery. It's about toughness. It is about getting the right guys and getting dogs on your team, and dogs who are bought in because you as a head coach command that respect. So with all that being said, why don't I think Kevin Stefanski's on the hot seat? Well, it's like, I think it's pretty simple. Even if they only get 4 to 5 wins, I think that Kevin Stefanski will still be the head coach in 2026. Why? It's because they've committed to this rebuild. And this is like a soft rebuild in the sense it's like you still have your vets and they think that they can turn it around fast enough based on all their draft equity and their picks over 2025 and 2026 that in the 2026 season, they can be a contender. They fully believe that. People might not believe it, but I think it's not a stretch whatsoever. All these picks that they've made over this past season hit, which I think it's like the only question marks are the quarterbacks. Everyone else is going to be a contributor right away. Going to be a really, really good piece. If you do that, you're right back in this thing. And they don't want to pull the rug out from Stefanski when realistically, he has never had the opportunity to build his team out the way that he saw fit. When he stepped in 2020 and he turned the team around, that was largely John Dorsey's roster and his free agent signings and all of these other things. He hasn't had the chance to develop a rapport and develop a quarterback, but he's worked well with every quarterback other than Deshaun Watson. He hasn't been able to bring in a running back. Nick Chubb was already there. Kareem Hunt was a free agent who was brought in. Now he has Judkins and he has Sampson. He has Harold Fannin Jr. Like he has all these pieces to be able to replace the old iconic pillars of this team, upgrade them in some scenarios, depending on who you look at, and build this thing going forward because the Cleveland Browns have been at their best since 1999 when a few things have happened. When Kevin Stefanski has been the head coach, when Kevin Stefanski has had the ability to call plays and run the offense he wants, and when Kevin Stefanski has been able to pick the quarterback he wants to play. When Deshaun Watson became the starter and they made him keep starting him, they lost a ton of games and had a historically bad offense. When they came in and made him fire Alex Van Pelt, which they did, and which I still get pushback from people on being like, that's not true. That's a conspiracy theory. It is the truth. Albert Breer came out and essentially said that it was the front office who stepped in and made them fire Van Pelt and bring in Ken Dorsey so they could get the most out of Deshaun Watson because they didn't want to look stupid for that signing. Newsflash, they look stupid. Ken Dorsey's fired. And now Tommy Rees steps up, which means this is Kevin Stefanski's offense again. That is when they have been at their best. So with all that being said, last year is an outlier season. There have been seasons where they haven't been as good, like the Jacoby Brissett year, the second year of Baker Mayfield, they weren't the same. But we saw what 2020 was. We saw what 2023 was. 2025, I don't think is going to be that. I think, honestly, like I said, 8 wins. I don't think they'll make the playoffs. I think the AFC is just so stacked, but I think 2026, they are a legitimate contender. And Kevin Stefanski is a large reason for that. He's also getting to reshape the culture, just the way that you're hearing these guys speak, like Quinshaw Judkins, Dylan Sampson. Those guys, like when you hear Judkins speak, they brought this guy in because it's like he absolutely has the talent, the home run ability, the ability to grind out yards. He is tough. But it's like these are like very locked in, respectful young men who are ready to make a difference. This is not like the John Dorsey, we're going to take a flyer on a guy because he has off-field issues and and all this stuff that has gotten them in the trouble in the past. They are trying to build an actual culture and a foundation going forward. So Kevin Stefanski, I think, is safe, barring like a 2-15 year. You know, even 3 wins is like that might become a problem, but ultimately it's like you could also make the argument the Browns want to lose a lot of games this season to have 2 really high first round draft picks. They know they're not going to make noise in the playoffs this year unless Joe Flacco consistently wins from week 1 to 6, which again, I think a lot of people, it'd be safe to bet against that from happening. So Kevin Stefanski will be back next year. And whenever the noise starts, just come back and watch this video again. So now the final thing that I want to talk about here. The Mason Graham controversy. So Mason Graham, the number 5 overall pick, the apple of so many Browns fans' eyes. Like, I love the Mason Graham pick. I think he's going to be a really, really great player. But you have some people who weren't really into it because maybe he just doesn't have like the look of a number 5 overall pick. The news comes out that he throws up during the 11-on-11 period in minicamp. And it's like, oh my God, you're throwing up in minicamp. People raising questions about all this stuff. But then I see this tweet from John Frashella. And John Frashella basically says, and I'm going to try and find the exact quote here. He tweets this, and the video accompanying this tweet is just Mason Graham in helmets and a shoulder pad going through drills with no competition in front of him whatsoever. And he says, I don't care what anyone says. This is not a 5th overall pick in the NFL draft. You can't draft people on name value. So to that, I responded, and I didn't get a response because I only have 400 followers on Twitter. Shout out, check me out, link in the bio or in the description. I said, this, as in a player going through drills in a helmet and shoulder pads, that is what you're saying a player shouldn't be drafted 5th overall based on? I'm like, that's a pretty terrible, loose, inconclusive argument. And it just kind of like sent me down this rabbit hole. And so many people, like even some Browns fans, jump on the bandwagon. They're like, oh my God, such a Browns pick. He's undersized. He looks frumpy. He does X, Y, and Z a certain way. But in reality, it's like they weren't making any sort of argument based on what he's done on the field throughout his career at Michigan. And it just started to drive me insane. It's like, so you're making this argument on Twitter. You're not including any tape to back up why you think this is. You're not showing any tape to build off of this statement that somebody shouldn't be placed with her. You're just saying that they shouldn't have been a 5th overall pick because they went through drills and looked a certain way. And I like when I went much deeper than that. These were his reasons from a previous tweet as to why Mason Graham shouldn't be a 1st-round pick. This is what he says. He weighed in 14 pounds lighter than he said he was. That was reason number 1. Reason number 2, he measured in with short arms. Okay. That might be some sort of argument if there were questions. There were questions like that about Will Campbell. Will Campbell's a left tackle. It's probably more important for a left tackle to have long arms than a D tackle. However, you could argue night and day about that. So whatever, maybe that's a legitimate gripe. But then number 3, analytics experts are not high on him. I don't even know what that means. Analytics experts are not high on him. So that's basically kind of the smoking gun right there of like, you listen to what an analytics expert said that they think he's not going to be effective. So that's dictating your opinion on whether or not he's a 1st-rounder. So, okay, we go on. Number 4, the only event he did at the combine was bench, and he finished 2nd to last. Meanwhile, the player who he said should be taken ahead of Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, his teammate from Michigan, was the person who actually did finish last in the bench press. So it's like, you've disproven yourself immediately there if you're including that as one of the reasons why he shouldn't be taken in the 1st round. So then, and also too, I want you to know, like, the bench press means relatively little, in my opinion, in a majority of situations. It's like Stephen Paya, if you remember him from like 2013, Bears drafted him, I think. He had the combine record for a little while with 49 reps. Guys, 49 reps of 225, that's very little for you as a football player, okay? It really doesn't matter. It really does not matter. And actually, I'm going to look this up right now. What was Aaron Donald's bench at the combine? Loading. Sorry, please wait with me. Okay, 35 reps. That's pretty significant. 35 reps is pretty damn good. But even still, Aaron Donald was 6'1" and 285 pounds. And he was graded as being an average backup or special teamer. That is where they had him. So all of that to say, it's like, even if you do have the bench press numbers, it's not like it's going to affect your position that much or have that much of a translation, whether it's super high or super low. It really does not matter. So there you go. And Kenneth Grant had 22 reps, and he still thinks that he should have been. Mason Graham had 24. And it really does not matter to me. It's like, what do you do on game film? So then number 5, and this one is a doozy. This was his 5th reason as to why he shouldn't go in the first round. He has been quiet the entire draft process. Low hype, low visibility. Typically, this screams hiding concerns. Okay, what does that mean? Typically, this screams hiding concerns. That literally is the most unverifiable metric statement you could possibly make. You're just saying anything at this point. He's like, it's also too, it's like Shedeur Sanders got all the hype, got all the attention. He went in the 5th round. It means nothing. It means nothing. How much hype did Will Campbell get coming out of the draft? And there were very vocal concerns about him, again, about his arm length, all this stuff. He went 4th overall. So complete nothing statement right there. And then 6, played next to an elite player in Kenneth Grant in an elite defense at Michigan. Major benefit to his production. You could say the exact same thing about Kenneth Grant. The exact same thing. So it's just such an asinine, baseless argument. And this is the thing. It's like, I am not bothered by anyone having a differing opinion than me. It's like, you would lose your mind if you were that kind of person, especially in the football commentating world. Like, everyone views everyone different. But to sit there and say that a guy is not worthy of a pick, and then your only ammunition is a video, like from training camp, going through a drill, that this is not what a 5th overall pick is so crazy. And this is what people need to worry about. It's like when you read someone's bio and it says NFL draft expert, NFL insider, they might have some sort of credential from their past that has given them the ability to like build a following and to give them some sort of feeling that they are an authority on what they're speaking on. But when you boil it down and you see these sorts of things over and over, and I say over and over because he said the same thing about Aiden Hutchinson, that he did not see him being a 1st round pick, definitely not 2nd overall. He had him as a 2nd round pick. Aiden Hutchinson. He had this. John Frashella had Aiden Hutchinson as a 2nd round pick. It's like when you see that and then you see NFL draft expert in their bio, you need to be a little bit more of Sherlock Holmes in terms of like who you're trusting and who you're believing. And this is not a thing to be like, trust me and believe in me. I'm just saying my opinions are actually based on me going into film and watching a lot of film on a player. I'm not just making statements. I also played football for an extremely long time. No, I did not play Division I NCAA football. I did not. But just to say, it's like, personally, I have way more experience than a lot of these people who are commentating and carrying themselves as some sort of expert. So when you see this stuff, it's like, guys, don't buy into it and don't get doom and gloom on a pick because a guy threw up during practice or because some person who's trying to pass themselves off as an expert claims they are. It's like, look into their evidence. There should be evidence that supports their opinion and their position when they're talking like this. So it's just crazy. And yeah, that's just something I wanted to touch on because this kind of like vitriol against Mason Graham, which a lot of people are stacking it up to the fact that you didn't get Travis Hunter. Again, there's no guarantee that Travis Hunter is going to be a lock. There's no guarantee that Abdul Carter is. There's no guarantee that any player is going to be amazing. But the consensus of like well-educated outlets who actually have people who get paid to analyze tape, it's like PFF. And I know PFF has their faults. I know like 33rd team, they have their faults. But in general, they've been pretty consistent in terms of the broader conversation around the NFL and draft prospects. Like there's shared beliefs that wind up coming out and being like, oh, they thought Josh Allen could be pretty good. And he turned out to be pretty good, more than pretty good. It's like Saquon Barkley. It's like They turned out to be pretty good. Aiden Hutchinson, people viewed him very highly. He turned out to be pretty good. And he still has a long career left to prove that he's even better than where he was picked at number 2 overall, right? We'll see in 10 years. But so much of like the NFL commentating world, it's people trying to make contrarian takes for clicks or just hoping that they can say something like this and it will hit. But when it doesn't, they never actually address it. They'll just keep saying, well, I just don't really like him. It's like, tell us why. And that is something that's like, hold me accountable to that. Like I fully come out and admitted where I am wrong on certain things, especially within the Browns. It's like last year, I thought the Browns were going to have 12 wins, I think. That was very early on. I think after the Cowboys game, I was like, I think we're in trouble here because this is not the team that we thought or that I thought this was going to be. All that to say, just be careful who you're watching and do your own research. Don't take my word for it. Don't take other people's words for it. It's like I'm looking at all this Shedeur Sanders stuff, the way it's playing out, and I am still convinced that he was way, way better than a 5th round pick. And a lot of people feel that way, but we will see. Maybe we were wrong, and all the NFL insiders in terms of people actually within the team and teams and scouting departments were right. So we're going to see on that. But with all that being said, this has been fantastic. My people, I got the Browns at 8-9. Let me know what you think the record is going to be. Let me know when you think Shedeur Sanders is going to get his first start as a Cleveland Brown, or if you think it'll be Dillon Gabriel. Make sure you check out the links in the bio. Follow me on Twitter. Go and check out the Patreon. Like I mentioned, that might be changing sometime soon, but you will be updated. Make sure you like and subscribe. And I believe that is all I have to ask of you. Finally, if you want to buy a shirt from Pumpkinhead, pumpkinhead.shop, all those are linked below. We will see you guys in the next one.